Greetings and welcome to another video and another look at books connected with aspects of travel. Now, what I want to talk about today is the books that I've read connected with the Sikh religion. And that might sound like a bit of a strange thing to be talking about at first on a travel channel, but the reason that it's relevant is, I would say, the primary influence behind me going to India back in 2013 was Sikhism. Basically, yes, I'd always been vaguely aware of Sikhism. In Britain, where I live, there are quite a lot of Sikhs, but I knew absolutely nothing about the religion until I went on a course at Edge Hill University, an amazing course studying comparative religions. And when we came to Sikhism, I hadn't expected it to be very interesting, and I actually, to my surprise, found myself fascinated by what I'd learned, and two things came from it. The first was that I'd said, yes, do you know what, I am going to go to the Golden Temple in Amritsar. And then the second one is that I developed a profound respect for Guru Nanak, who's the founder of the Sikh religion. But, apart from that course, I didn't know anything about it. So what I did is try to find some books about Sikhism. And I think for anybody who's going to India and thinking of going to certainly the Golden Temple, but also any of the other famous Gurdwaras, and of course that can also apply to trips to Pakistan, because there are some really famous and beautiful Gurdwaras in Pakistan as well, then I think a bit of background reading on Sikhism is well worth the effort. That said, it is an effort because books are few and far between in English. And like I say, I live in Britain. We have a huge Sikh minority. I mean, I think we have either the second or third biggest Sikh population in the world. And you go in the religious section in a bookstore and there is nothing on Sikhism. There's loads on Zen Buddhism, there's loads on, Kabbalah thoughts, there's loads on knowing your tarot cards, or let alone Christianity and Islam. But Sikhism, there's nothing. And it's a real shame because it's interesting. The first book that I got, and I can't actually show you the copy because I've put it somewhere and I can't find it, but that is a seminal book, and I think if there is one book that you read on Sikhism in English, it is this one, and it is very easy to remember. It is called Sikhism, and it is by a gentleman named Hew McLeod. And Hew is spelled H-E-W, and McLeod M-C-L-E-O-D. It is available online very easily, and it is it's about 300 pages long. It is a basic history of how the religion was founded and its tenets and all that kind of stuff. Brilliant. It really readable, really interesting. When I read that book, it answered so many questions, but then it also opened up a lot more. And a lot of the questions that book opened up explain my choice of books later on. Now, what I did notice that I really, really liked about it was at the end, after it had gone through the general chapters of the history, there was actually a rundown of sects of Sikhism. And that's something that when it is presented in the West, and it isn't really presented that often, but when it is, we're always taught of Sikhism as this one thing. And it's taught in a very monolithic approach, with the Khalsa Sikhism being the one that's taught, which is right in that that's by far and away the biggest and most influential branch of the Sikh religion, but there are others, and I found it very interesting to get this brief introduction of the others. So that's Sikhism by Hew McLeod. If there's one book I recommend, it's that one. Now, but the problem is I couldn't get anything else. There was nothing else on offer, so I had to wait till I went to India. And one of my first tasks after I'd gone around the Golden Temple was to go to the Sikh bookstore in Amritsar. It's next to the temple itself, and I bought some books. And the first one that I bought, well, the first two, are these, and that is A History of the Sikhs by Khushwant Singh. Now, Khushwant Singh is the man when it comes to Sikh history and Sikh writing. He's on loads of documentaries and stuff. He's Indian, but he writes excellent English, and this is basically, it's the same book, you might say, because there's 2 volumes. Volume 1 is from 1469 to 1839, and Volume 2 is from 1839 till 2004. Now, looking at Volume 1, which is naturally the one you're going to read first, I was really excited reading this, and yet I soon got bogged down in it, and I'll be honest with you, I struggled to finish this book. This book really disappointed me. Part of it was the subject matter, because once you've got through the stories of the 10 living gurus, which I knew the background of anyway, and I knew bits about, and of course I'd read also in Hew McLeod's Sikhism, he then goes through Punjabi history, and Khushwant Singh seems to view Sikhism as a very natural conclusion to Punjabi nationalism. So, this is the Punjab's national religion. And so it's essentially turns into a bit of a history of the Punjab from a Sikh perspective. And one of the problems is it's really hard to follow because there's just so many invasions, and this group invade them, and then there's a rebellion, that group invade them, and you lose count of what's happened, and it just gets repetitive. That said, if it's hard to read, it must have been much harder to live through. What it did do is explain the martial strain in Sikhism, because I think a lot of people with a very basic understanding, they look at Guru Nanak, he's very, very peaceful, very non-violent. And then you look at Guru Gobind Singh, the last guru, and he set up the Khalsa, which, is quite martial, and you think, how did that happen? And I think when you have that background of Punjabi history, you get that. But it was hard going. And also, and this is perhaps my fault as much as Khushwant Singh's, but I detest nationalism. So when you're sit there telling me that this is all nationalism, religion is nationalism, I don't like that. Because to me, certainly the message of Guru Nanak was internationalist. It was for anyone. I mean, the first thing he said when he came out of the river was that, there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim. If that isn't a statement of internationalism, what is? And then to back it up, he went off on 4 journeys, north, south, east and west, covering religious sites of all the faiths that he came across. So I didn't like the nationalistic strain of it. That said, I know a lot of Sikhs, and I know Sikhism can be very much connected with Punjabi nationalism. But then, let's look at the Punjab today. It's not even the majority religion, because if you count Pakistani Punjab, which is far bigger, it's Islam. So yeah, there's that. What I also didn't like about this was the non-critical approach. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But that was the first volume. Therefore, it was a while before I picked up volume 2 and thought... And in the end, I picked it up not because I wanted to read it, but I thought, well, you read half, you should read the other half. And actually, the bit I'd expected to be boring, 1839, essentially beginning the colonial era, it was really interesting. It was a lot better as a book than the first one. There was loads of stuff I didn't know about, and it explained loads of things, and there was loads of information on the more recent events, Operation Blue Star, and when the tanks were sent into the Golden Temple, which really, really angered a lot of Sikhs. And getting into, I always forget the name of the guy, and I'm probably going to say it completely wrongly, but Bindranwale, who was, I don't know, I don't want to offend anyone, but he comes across in these books as very much, the Sikh version of a Salafi or a Bin Laden. He was very much a fundamentalist, and he died a martyr, and he's very highly thought of, and that when one sees the very inclusive side of Sikhism, his vision is hard to understand. So I don't mean to offend anyone there, but yeah. So that was that. That half I found better than the other. But my issue was the critical thinking, and that goes back to Sikhism and Hew McLeod. That was very critical, and what it would do is it would sit there and it would say, we're given this Khalsa narrative, but actually there are other narratives. And he talked about the Udasis, and the Udasis were a sect of Sikhism that still exists, but it's very small and minor now, but used to be massively important, and was far more Hindu in their outlook. And they actually followed, as well as the gurus, they followed the son of Guru Nanak. And his name's Baba Sri Chand. And basically their approach is very much more like a Hindu approach, and they don't have, I think, they don't have the Guru Granth Sahib, so it's almost a religion without a book, but with holy figures instead. And that very alternative vision fascinated me, and so I made sure that I went to the Udasi Gurdwara when I was in Amritsar, and I bought this. And this is a spiritual biography of Baba Sri Chandji, so that's Guru Nanak's son. Guru Nanak had two sons, and they're often portrayed as two extremes. So one was very worldly, he liked to hunt and kill animals, he liked to dress up nicely, he was a bit of a womanizer, whereas Baba Sri Chand went the other way. He's very much like your Hindu ascetic. He was spending all the time meditating. And I think the message is that actually the right path is Guru Nanak's, which is somewhere in between. But, this figure fascinated me. And so I bought this book. It is what you would call a hagiography. And it just tells you about one miracle after another. But it's very interesting as a kind of window onto a Sikh story that we hear nothing about, is never told. And I think it's great for people travelling to India, because certainly if you relate it to the Hindu religion, we struggle, I think, in the West to get our heads around Hinduism, because it's not a religion, it's lots of different traditions and localised cults given this umbrella name. And so looking at this, I think, is really helpful for people going to India. And if you do, check out Udasi Gurdwara. There is one actually next to the Sikh bookshop. When I was in the Sikh bookshop, I wanted to get some books on the Udasis. They just weren't any, or at least they weren't selling them. But what I didn't like about Khushwant Singh's books is, they're basically saying, well, the Khalsa way is the way, and, yes, the Udasis, whom they mention fleetingly, they were powerful once, but they're not anymore, and that's that. And, I would have liked more reasoned debate and depth in that. Now, going on, going back actually to where I originally started, I said I found Guru Nanak inspirational. And perhaps the main reason why that is, for a travelling website, he's a traveller. This guy went off on 4, and then again this is confusing, and my pronunciation probably won't help, but 4 Udasis, which is a different Udasi than the Udasi sect, but Udasi means journey. And a lot of the stories of his life tell about when he went off on this journey, and he would meet Hindu priests, and he would come out with little nuggets of spiritual wisdom to them, and then he would meet Muslim clerics and come out with gems of spiritual wisdom to them. And I am so inspired by the vision of a man who says that the truth is not in one tradition, but he would visit them all, and as he himself said, there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim. We are all Sikhs, which just means disciples of God. So I was particularly interested in the character of Guru Nanak. When I went to India, I said, have we got a book about Guru Nanak's 4 journeys? No, there wasn't any made, or at least not in English. So I have since bought 2 books about Guru Nanak. This one is Guru Nanak, His Life and Teachings by Roopinder Singh. It's one of those coffee table books, it's great with lots of pictures and stuff. Not overly heavy on the information, but you know what, there's still quite a bit. It's not just like, a picture book about Guru Nanak. And it's nice to dip into, and it's easy to read. And from my point of view, what I like is that, it does talk about the journeys. There's a section on each journey. So there we are. You see, there's the 3rd journey. And so, yeah, I personally want more depth, but it's great as an introduction. So I'm not going to knock this book at all. The last book that I'm going to talk about is this one. It's called Singing Guru, and that is by Kamla Kapur. And she's Sikh. She's there on the back, look. But she lives in America, and she looks a bit new age, to be honest. And she has written books about Ganesha and Rumi, so I think she's generally just quite a spiritual person. And I suppose this is... I don't know how you would describe this. It is described as a novel. Yes, I suppose it is a bit like a novel. But it's... I bought it expecting a life of Guru Nanak. It isn't. It's a story told by Mardana, who was the Muslim player of the musical instrument. I'm just trying to remember what that instrument's called. A bit like a lute, I suppose you would say. But, yes, it begins with an R. I have found it. It's called the Rabab. Rabab. Yeah, so this is this instrument, and there it is on the front, a rabab. But yeah, and so it's told from the point of view of Mardana. He's the narrator, and it concerns a lot of legends that are written about him. But he's basically getting across the Guru's message through his novel. And the framework is that one legend says that because of his lust for women, Mardana was enslaved by some temptresses and turned into a goat, and he was going to be sacrificed, but Guru Nanak freed him. And I suppose the framework of the story is that he's talking to the other men who had been enslaved by these temptresses and turned into goats, and he was telling them about how amazing Guru Nanak is and getting the message across and some of the key episodes in Guru Nanak's life. It's a really good book. It's readable, and you don't even have to have a background or much knowledge on Sikhism. Yeah, it's great. Get this book. It's brilliant. I really want to get her other, certainly the Rumi one, because I've been to Rumi's tomb and Rumi interests me. But yeah, get this one, The Singing Guru by Kamla Kapur. And those are my books on Sikhism. And like I say, I used those books, or some of them before, some of them after, to really enrich my time in India. And I would say, if you are going to India, because so many people go to India because of the religious aspects, then read up a bit first, take some stuff with you. Perhaps in the future, if I go again, I'll give you a short video on books about Hindu traditions that I've read. But yeah, if you're going to India, please, if you can get it on your itinerary, go to the Golden Temple, because it is absolutely amazing. If not, go to another Gurdwara. They're really beautiful spiritual places. I will do a video on why that is one day. But in the meantime, thanks for watching and keep travelling. Waheguru, 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 and Waheguru, 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 Waheguru.